Good morning, all. I feel like I'm saying that a lot at the moment. Good morning. I'm starting to get a bit of a song going with it. So welcome to the Pagabo Live Pavilion this morning. We are delighted to have Lord Khan with us today, Minister for Faith, Communities and Resettlement. Lord Khan is... This is what I get for reading from my phone, isn't it? And it goes off. Time's out. With a lifelong commitment to empowering communities, we're supporting those starting new lives in the UK. Lord Khan leads with integrity, compassion and vision, so I'm told. I'll let you correct me if that's wrong. I'm going to hand over to Lord Khan to do an introductory speech, and then we'll have a few questions and welcome questions from the room as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen, and good morning and welcome to all. Firstly, I would like to thank everyone who's joined us today. I know it's the last day, so well done for surviving all those busy conversations, and I bet you have actually ended up talking to each other after 3-4 days of this conference. I'm thrilled to be here in Leeds alongside many parliamentary colleagues to discuss our mutual interests in investing in our communities. Earlier today, I spoke about how important our collective pride in places to the successful regeneration and growth of our local communities. And now I get the chance to talk even more about the work we're doing in government to bring people together and leverage the power of collaboration to support the revitalisation of our communities. I also know how important supporting people from difficult backgrounds into various opportunities is to you. And Karen, you've been brilliant on this in making sure bringing people together in an inclusive way and realising how this helps in the development of our communities. For those who don't know me, I'm a lad from Burnley who has always believed in the power of communities coming together to resolve local issues. In my previous role as a local councillor, followed by becoming the mayor of Burnley, I've always looked to ensure that I can play my part in bringing people together. As a lecturer for several years, I sought to highlight the power of strong local leadership and empowering wider communities to participate in their local processes to tackle local issues. Whether it's about healing local divisions or shaping future investment, I've always felt that the sense of responsibility to build positive connections that unite us all and fostering more cohesive communities. That sense of responsibility continues to inspire me today in the role as the Minister for Communities, Faith and Resettlement. And in this capacity, I reiterate my commitment to building cohesion across the United Kingdom and again convey my support to all those who work to strengthen cohesion within our communities. Faith and belief communities are a massive part of my portfolio as a minister. Our nation is truly enriched by its diverse tapestry of faith and beliefs. For many people, faith shapes their moral outlook, inspires public service and drives support for those in need. I've long believed that faith and belief communities are essential to our nation's well-being, not only in meeting immediate needs, but also in building long-term resilience and solidarity. Anyone involved in local life knows just how vital faith-based organisations and places of worship are. They run schools and toddler groups, they support food banks, fight homelessness and bring comfort to the lonely, serving people of all faiths and none. Without them, much of our local life simply wouldn't function. Since June last year, I've travelled across the country meeting faith and belief communities, listening, learning and witnessing firsthand the powerful impact they make. In my role as Faith Minister, I'm committed to working with faith leaders and communities, drawing on their energy and ideas to bring people together and heal divisions as well as strengthening our society. This government values the vital role of faith, and we are clear in our commitment to building a safer, more resilient Britain where every community feels secure, heard and respected. Because when we work together across faiths and differences, we build a stronger country for everyone. Beyond their vital social role, places of worship also bring significant economic benefits to local communities. We're speaking here in the cathedral city of Leeds, where, as in many cities, the cathedral stands as an iconic symbol valued for its architecture and history. While they are foremost places of worship, they also attract millions of visitors, up to 9.5 million annually, who contribute to the local economy through spending on hotels, eating out, transport and other services. Recent research shows that England's 42 Anglican cathedrals contribute £235 million to local economies through direct jobs and the wider impact of tourism. Their presence can only enhance a city's appeal, encouraging further investment. Take Blackburn's Cathedral Quarter, a £34 million regeneration project that has transformed the town centre. The development has created a vibrant mixed-use quarter, including new public areas and gardens that link the cathedral directly with a new cathedral square, featuring offices, restaurants and a hotel, introducing new leisure and tourism opportunities that enhance the visitor experience and boost the local economy. Cathedrals have been cultural landmarks in cities and towns across the country, and while Christian worship, of course, remains at the heart of what they do, today they also serve as adaptable spaces for a wide range of events benefiting both worshippers, the wider community, and visitors. Despite all this fantastic work to deepen those connections within and throughout our communities, there remains some that seek to undermine the bonds that hold us together. Events around the world can and have presented challenges in our own communities. Global migration patterns, economic shifts, and geopolitical tensions continue to influence how communities interact. With our rich cultural diversity, whilst it remains something that we are most proud of and continue to celebrate, we must remain vigilant to ensure that in the midst of international events, our communities and residents can live in harmony. This requires a proactive approach, one in which government must address social inequalities, promote equal opportunities, and ensure that all voices are heard. The UK is an overwhelmingly tolerant and inclusive country. However, we cannot forget that last summer we saw unrest in communities across the United Kingdom. We meet together in Leeds today, which is one of those places that experience disorder on its streets. And yet, in the face of those who sought to sow distrust and division, we have seen admirable examples of communities coming together in Hare Hills and Southport, both of which I have visited, to clear up the damage on the streets. And in Southport, we saw the rebuilding of walls of the affected mosque. Leeds has stood together to recover from the damage caused, to repair the local bonds that were stretched, and rebuild relationships within the local community. I believe it is appropriate that we meet here today to reiterate that message of unity. And if you indulge me, I, begrudgingly as a Burnley resident, admit that this spirit of unity has shone bright at Ellen Road this year. Though, let's be honest with you, let's be quite frank with you, they're only on top because of goal difference. I spend a lot of time talking to communities, seeking to understand how we can build our resilience against division. Since the turn of the millennium, we have seen multiple experiences of disorder on our streets. When this occurs, there is profound economic impact. The final bill of the 2011 UK riots was estimated at around £500 million. However, some research suggests that social cohesion has the potential to generate billions to the UK economy through additional social welfare improvements. By focusing our efforts on building social capital, our connections to and beyond our social networks, this will enable people across society to collaborate, build trust, and provide opportunities for growth. Through ongoing engagement with local stakeholders, you know that society wants to see change. Change to ensure people feel a sense of belonging to their community, pride in their community, and that we bring people together to work towards the betterment of our national and local communities. As part of this effort, I would like to highlight that the government is working to develop a longer-term, more strategic approach to social cohesion. It is integral that this involves working in partnership with communities and local stakeholders to rebuild, renew, and address the deep-seated issues. The new £1.5 billion plan for neighbourhoods represents a first part of government's aim to revitalise local areas and enhance community cohesion by delivering up to £20 million funding over the next decade into 75 communities across the United Kingdom. This new programme highlights the government's commitment to repairing fractured communities, bringing people back together, and ensuring that people see a visible improvement in their communities. And this only represents the very start of what this government will be doing to leverage the collective power of our communities by bringing people together to build, in partnership with local stakeholders, reinvigorated places that can be that each and every one of us can be proud of. So I want to just finish off by saying I would like to reiterate my thanks for today's organisers and attendees on behalf of myself and my parliamentary colleagues for bringing us together to discuss these issues of the utmost importance. And I also want to say thank you for that nice warm-up jacket I can use in this unpredictable weather sometimes. But colleagues, together we must ensure that everyone can contribute to local decision-making processes and that we bring people from all different backgrounds together to build strong, durable relationships within and between our communities. These relationships and our collective participation in local processes will be integral as we look to reinvigorate the places we call home, bringing through further opportunities for investment and local growth. By fostering that dialogue, understanding and cooperation, we can work towards a more cohesive and harmonious society that we can all be proud of. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So this session's been branded as a fireside chat, and we're significantly lacking a fire and our slippers and a whiskey, maybe?
We've got the jacket stuff.
We've got the jackets. We've got the jackets. We're good. So we welcome you all to our living room. we have a few questions, but feel free, obviously, to I think a lot of that you've touched on in your speech there. We can maybe elaborate on some of those points, but we're quite happy for questions from the room as well. So please feel free to pop your hand up, and we've got a roaming mic that can get to you. So your key priorities, you've listed quite a few there. Is there any of your key priorities and immediate initiatives that you would like to expand on?
Yeah, so one of the big focus for me, I've got a very interesting portfolio, faith, communities and resettlement, very tricky areas. And I think all that my portfolio collided during last summer's disorder. It was difficult. I was one of the first ministers after the Prime Minister and Home Secretary to visit Southport. I think for me, it's important to say this. It was an atrocious attack, what happened, and we lost 3 beautiful angels and many were injured. But the policemen and women that were attending that first scene of crime went back later in the evening to serve and police the protest, and they were getting bricks and stones thrown at them. So it's a very difficult, situation to work with, and so I think it's important to bring our country back together. We've got to be the challenges now in 2025 is social media has a much more impact than we saw in 2001 in Burnley, which we suffered from disturbances and riots there. So I've got to rebuild relationships, and so reset the relationships. For example, on that point, Karen, is that when I speak to the faith sector, they say to us, and this is quite a valid concern and criticism, that say, well, you only come to us when you need us. And that relationship's transactional, and we've got to make sure that relationship is of equal partnership. So the big focus is making sure that when you're working with communities, you work in partnership. I can't sit in Westminster, neither can my officials sit in Westminster and know what's best in Hare Hills or Ellen Road and other parts of Leeds or Bradford or wherever, Burnley. We've got to work on local knowledge, local expertise and local intelligence to know what is brewing up, what the tensions are. So that's so important to reset that relationship. I've done about 130 faith visits and engagements combined, which is in 10 months. And it's been up and down the country. My other point on this, Karen, is that we can't do community cohesion on the cheap. It's just not, you can't do it. And we've got to make sure we've got to put money into this work. And so that's 75 neighbourhoods is a start of a big program, but I want to personally enhance that program and make it bigger and put more focus across the country.
Excellent, thank you. So leading from that, I don't think anyone could not be in the knowledge that our societies are becoming ever increasingly diverse, posing more of a challenge, I would imagine, for your department, more of an opportunity to really bring our societies together. So how is your department approaching the relationship between faith and social cohesion in this increasingly diverse situation we're in?
That's a good question, because faith plays a huge role in social cohesion. Let me be clear. I mean, what we see is through interfaith work that takes place, like a lot of local authorities have strong interfaith forums or networks or kind of places of people to get together. And I think it's important when you see over half of a population in England and Wales identifies with a faith, is the power of the work of faith can play in ensuring that social cohesion can be promoted and strengthened. It's just this concept of understanding each other, and I think it's important to have that set up locally, and I think that's what worries me, because when you go up and down the country, you see the biggest concern that I have, and I say this quite honestly, is that as a country we've got to build resilience, and resilience comes through from structures, strong governance, and proactive approach. We should always be aware of what could go wrong, and if something goes wrong, how are we ready for this? So the word I'm looking at is preparedness, right? How are you prepared to deal with not just disturbances and violence and disorder, but also in terms of outbreaks, medical emergencies? What really hurts me is that we've built some brilliant examples. Look at the pandemic, right? Churches, mosques, gurdwaras, temples, all faith institutions opened their places of institution to get vaccinated and get tested, and that benefited people of faith and no faith. Everyone benefited from the space there. And after all that happened, we just kind of said, okay, let's move on. But we've got to have some kind of a continuous relationship, so people don't think we're transactional. Like the faith communities, often the faith leaders say, well, it's like a fourth emergency service when you come in to us when you're in crisis. I think we need to recognize that there's a lot of faith institutional space out there, but the communities themselves, I meet right across the whole sector. It's 130 plus of meetings I've had, and engagements and visits. You kind of realize the great diversity of what we have in our country, but is that structured in a way that we can support social cohesion? I don't think so. Do our local councils, I'll finish on this point because I know it's a long answer, but are our local councils, have they got the right support mechanisms and understanding and structures to support resilience in our country? God forbid if something else happens that's of national significance. That is something that worries me and keeps me up at night, and I think that's my conversation. I'm hopefully spending reviews coming soon, and I've pitched hard to ensure that we can support local authorities, because 14 years has been difficult in terms of lack of resources.
I'm sure. Over that 14 years, what examples of good collaboration could you highlight to us? What's worked? Is it certain regions? Is it certain parts of the UK, or certain types of authorities that seem to be bringing good case studies forward for you?
I think I'm going to be quite blunt here. I think I want to push for, I'm going to be careful I don't announce government policy here, but what I want to do is have local cohesion action plans. I would prefer every local authority to have a local cohesion action plan. For me, there's so many good examples. What's worked well is people that have been invested to do something that takes a lot of time. You can't, when you build relationships and networks and resilience, it doesn't happen overnight. It takes years and years of effort. So you've got to look at it from a long-term approach. So we are looking at a 10-year plan to deal with social cohesion. I sit on a communities and recovery steering group headed by the Deputy Prime Minister. I sit on that group where it's all the Secretary of States. Too often we see that it's for my department, MHCLG, communities, local government, to think about community cohesion. I think it's a government-wide focus. There's lots of issues like health inequalities. There's Home Office. There's Ministry of Justice in terms of our courts. Also, this big one is DSIT, the Department for Science and Innovation Technology. Some of the misinformation and disinformation that's coming out, it's hard to control. Good examples for me has been people that have invested in long-term, continuous focus, have not stopped doing it. And that's the example. You can't keep your eye off the ball. This work, it takes time. And what's really worries me, Karen, is that it takes years to build relationships and trust, but it takes hours sometimes to just everything to disintegrate, because we don't know how to deal with the fast changing nature of WhatsApp messages and groups and on social Twitter and other platforms. And this is why I think the online safety bill is an important piece of legislation. But we need to look at it in more a holistic point of view, because we can't be in a situation where social media platforms are allowing for hours and days and if not weeks hate to be peddled and unchallenged and remaining on their platform. So the answer, long-winded answer, but is long-term approach will always win.
Absolutely. I think our earlier conversation about the age of our children is a very pressing worry with our WhatsApp and platforms, and really getting that message right and getting that plan in place for the young ones coming through.
Just because I was asking Karen for some parental advice.
God help you, honestly. So how do you see within those plans that you were talking about there? How is that? Could that be a part of how you see faith and cultural identity contributing to regeneration and revitalisation of towns and cities?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I've just shared examples, and earlier this morning I was talking. Heritage is huge. What you get around in our country now, you've got beautiful, churches, synagogues, amazing buildings that have been there for hundreds of years. I went to Woking, and that was like the first mosque was built in 1898 or something. It was. Forgive me if I've got that wrong for anybody from Woking, but it was a beautiful building, and I thought, wow, this is amazing. And I think, and people and the tourism that comes from that, and people from abroad visit. In a different life, when I was an academic, this is a funny story for you. For some reason, I had to host the former deputy prime minister of Russia in a different life when I was an academic, and they were doing a visit, and I took him to Lancaster, and I showed him Lancaster, the cathedral there. They were obsessed by it. I loved it. It was a beautiful building, and I was trying to drag him away to move for the next year, and they just wanted to do, have a look around. And I think what we have is, through faith, through the buildings, through the infrastructure, through the beautiful architecture, what we have is people are fascinated because we are innovative and creative as a country, and you see that in our buildings, whether that's in homes, whether that's offices, whether that's mixed-use buildings, but also you see that in particular from a faith perspective. So when I visited the Cambridge Mosque, I was it's an eco mosque. I was just fascinated, and the people were coming in and flying in from Indonesia. So there's not just national and local interest. There's an international interest in our infrastructure, in our architecture, from different across the faiths in particular. So, I mean, recently the Pope, His Holiness Pope Francis passed away. I attend a lot of the Requiem masses across different Catholic churches. It reminded me, it was a sad situation, but it reminded me of the beautiful architecture of his tradition and heritage and history that we have, and that isn't still explored and celebrated. And I think we've got to do much more in school. I don't know how we do our RE classes, religious RE classes. I mean, some people tell me, Lord Khan, you're a big champion of faith, but actually RE is being taught by the PE teacher in my school. My school where the kid goes. I think we've got to really focus on celebrating that.
Absolutely. It's certainly the case in our school. We'll get the PE teacher, the maths teacher, whoever we can hand in. It's just not good. So within that, thinking about regeneration, obviously a big part of what we deal with day in and day out within Pagabo is regeneration of spaces, placemaking, making places right for people, and it's very much led by people. I think that's been the consensus of every conversation I've had while I've been at UKREiiF today. We need to take it back to our people. So what role are local authorities, do you feel, are playing within that? If we're thinking about, regeneration could be building completely new. It could be starting from scratch. It could be taking account of these gorgeous historic buildings that have been there for years and building new around that, or making use of spaces for new things. What role are local authorities playing within that cohesion that is really important for our faiths within that?
Local authorities play a huge role, and I speak from experience. I was a local councillor for 16 years, And actually, at one stage, for a good few years, I was a cabinet member for finance. I remember this is so important. So local authorities have got to do what's best for their communities, and that's why it's important to have that strong relationship with the local communities and consult. And consultation is important, and we've got to make sure this is a really controversial subject, because I used to teach on this subject, and I used to call, we have to consult and not do something called post hoc rationalization of predetermined decisions. Bit of a mouth word sentence there. Post hoc rationalization of predetermined decisions. We can't, as I'm conscious I've got some very brilliant, excellent civil servants here, but we can't have officials to decide and politicians to decide from London what's best for people in Leeds. We can't have this centralised approach. Local authorities know their communities better, local knowledge, they know exactly what needs to be done. And so it's really important that we have that kind of regular understanding of what the community needs. And the worst thing you can do is build something what the community says later. That just doesn't fit this modern, young, diverse population in this part of the town. That doesn't fit in terms of our increasing, elderly people living in this retirement homes. If we don't, it's going to be a mismatch. And I think that's what, when people lose trust in politics. I remember when I was in the role of a finance cabinet minister for Burnley, and this is really interesting. I did a round table with young people from year 10 students from schools, because they won't let the year 11s out because of the GCSEs that sometime in June. And I said to them, what do you want to see in Burnley? And predominantly, I'd say the female students there would say, we want a Primark. Fair point, I get it, all disposable fashion wear. And I thought, and then everybody just turned around and said, we want a Nando's in Burnley. And I looked at it and I thought, okay, and it took me years and years, and I kid you not, I would like a relentless, I would like a dog with a bone, I'm going to go and get this done. And so I personally made sure Primark came to Burnley. I went in and got it. And what does that do? Because Burnley was a town centre, we increased our footfall by 28%. It was a massive anchor. But also, Nando's, when I left the council, I didn't stop campaigning for Nando's, because what you've got to do, you've got to respond to what people want. People, you've got ideas, people got creativity. And what did that do? Because Burnley is a university town. We have people from Qatar and people coming all from the United States studying in Burnley, and that didn't have a nice place for them to have a coffee shops and desserts and have this mixed use. And because Nando's came there, again we have all these extra. Taco Bell came, and we had other really nice food places. It internationalized Burnley, and we had all these Qatari number plates, these Lamborghinis and flying into Burnley, and all the local kids were thinking, what's going on here? And then they had nowhere to go. They'd live in Manchester. Someone live in London and study in Burnley. And I thought, wow. So we've got to create the opportunity for people to come and live in these places. But also, the big point is, and I say this with a very heavy heart, stop losing people. In northern towns, we need to stop people moving to down south. To other cities. We've got to make sure we keep our talent, because the worst thing happens is, people go and get educated at university but never come back to the hometown. I refuse to do that. I'm a big advocate. I still live in Burnley now. I'm going to go back to Burnley today and enjoy myself when I get back home. As much as I love London, working there is important. I count down the hours before I get back up north. But that's important. You've got to respond to people's needs. You can't just pretend that you know what they want. You've got to ask them what they want, and ask them again and again and again, and never give up on what they want.
Absolutely. I think that resonates with quite a lot of the conversations that we were talking about with the Great North type initiatives as well, earlier in UKREiiF, of invest to stay. We need to inspire our youth, our kids that are coming through school, people who are investing in coming to university in places, to want to stay there. There's opportunity. There's Nando's. There's Primark. You've got to stay.
But why Nando's? I'll tell you why. Because people thought, in Nando's, if you have a Nando's, it's a bit more upmarket. And it lifts the town in terms of presence. We've got more an international brand there, and it does wonders. And if you ever go to Burnley Nando's, the joke in the local council is this is Wadge's favourite eating place, and this is apparently they think I've got some kind of involvement in the ownership of Burnley Nando's. But when it goes, it's full all the time. You can't get a seat in. People complain to me you can't get a seat into Nando's. I go, no, I can't get. But it's a big thing. It's successful. But the young people. And we've got a lot of young populations. We've got to do what they want. You can't pretend to listen to them and not do, and do something else that you think you know best. You've got to be humble enough to say, this is what they want. And Primark, Nando's are just classic examples, which I'm proud to have my own involvement in that.
Absolutely. I think, kids, I'm going to sound really old now, but kids wanted to go to youth clubs, didn't they? They wanted to go, they would have a place where they felt present, that felt like it was theirs. They could have some sort of part of that and shape in it. It's not the case now. They want to go somewhere that they want to, have a cool place to hang out with their friends. They want to go and get some food. Primark is a social hub, whether we like it or not. There's the massive Primarks that have got cafes and Hello Kitty cafes and all sorts going on. And if I see any more Stitch, there's going to be some trouble. But they are the places. It sounds crazy that that's what kids are asking for on the face of it, but it all contributes, it all helps, doesn't it? Well, that's the end of my questioning.
I want to say something. I want to say something. I forgot to mention this to you. Actually, not your part of the world. One of the areas where I visited, this is really important, Northeast, I spent a really long afternoon visiting Sunderland, Middlesbrough and Hartlepool. And what shook me was when the mayor of Middlesbrough said to me, Lord Khan, we want to do some community cohesion stuff, but we're trying to organise a community fund day, but we think again when we look at the budget, we've got enough money for the bouncing castle, and that really hurt me. It just shook me inside, and quite emotional for me when I heard that. And I remember one young woman with hijab, and she said to me, "We are sick to death of civil servants and politicians consulting us to death, asking us what we want, and keep asking what we want, and keep asking what you want, and nothing happens." And I think regeneration is so important in terms of building stronger communities and having pride in your local area and building that kind of continuous, I want to stay here. Because when you look around your town or your neighbours and nothing's changed, nothing's coming through, you think to yourself, you feel it can be a very difficult place. It's loneliness, people don't care about us. And that's why you get people who don't trust the systems working for you, who don't care about their aspirations in life. They don't think they're going to, whatever happens in life, it'll never get better. We've had too many prime ministers stand on the steps of Downing Street and said, we've got to look after those people that are left behind, or just about managing, whatever you want to call that particular people. We've got to recognise that there's this big trust problem, and people don't believe that the politicians and the systems and the local councils, whichever regional mayors are making an impact in their life. That's got to change. We've got to show that there's a path that we can make an impact in the local communities, and we've got to look at. I mean, I've got a keen interest in speaking to people that were on them protests and demonstrating, actually, but who were not violent, who did not break any law, who didn't undertake violent disorder, but were there with their children, stood in them protests. I think we've got to have them conversations, however tough it is. And as a Minister for Communities, people tell you how it is. And I think it's important to have that kind of honest, candid approach. Otherwise, we're going to have a system where we're going to have another generation of people thinking the system doesn't work for us. And that kind of lack of aspiration is the biggest danger for us as a country, where people think their lives cannot get better. And that really is worrying me. And it's a tough place to be. But can I just pay a tribute to my wonderful civil servants here? Who when I tell them I'm going to have another 130 engagements over the next 10 months, they hold their head in despair. But that's where we're going to do it. Speak to people, listen to people, and eventually, we've got to get to the place where we can't keep listening. We've got to do something. Otherwise, they will lose confidence and faith in the system.
Absolutely, it's a lot of asking and not. You can't keep asking. You can't keep asking questions. Look, I would be failing in myself if I didn't pull this back to procurement in some shape or form. Look at my procurement colleagues around the room. We have legislations that we can't ask questions that we're not going to take account of. We evaluate a bid, we ask a contractor what they're going to do. We can be legally challenged on not actually listening to the answer of that question and taking account on it and acting on it. That's a problem throughout society. It's not just government, it's not just politics, is it? It's certainly not just your department at all that you're feeling it, but constant asking of questions and not actually acting on the resolve, the answer to that is a big issue. It's a big issue. Anyway, I'll shut up. Any questions from our audience? Yeah.
Lord Khan, I wonder, could you comment on, do you think there's a danger that central and local government take advantage of the charitable instincts of faith-based organisations? And I use food banks as an example. How many are run by charity, faith-based organisations? And I still struggle to believe that a country of the wealth of the UK still has food banks.
Bill, is it? Yeah. But thank you for your question. I think one amazing part of my job is working under the Deputy Prime Minister. And she's genuinely very keen to transfer power to local communities. You'll see this through the devolution bill. I'm currently working on the planning and infrastructure bill, which is going to be a huge landmark, probably the biggest bill in the Parliament, which I keep getting, spoken to by Rachel Reeves and Ed Miliband. Gordon Brown said something about this yesterday, about people, poverty. It's not about people who are not working, it's people who actually are working, and it's low wage and low pay. I think your question about we are reliant and this danger of saying, well, actually we don't need to worry about it because faith groups and communities are doing that. I think that's a challenge, and I think there is some thinking across government in that. My job is, as a faith minister, is not to say, hey, how you doing, guys? I visited your church, mosque, and Gurdwara. I hope you're well, right? My job is actually to recognise and understand that the work of faith communities is beneficial to our country, and government needs to work in equal partnership and support the faith communities to do what they're doing better and enhance what they're doing, but also to ensure that across government, every other government department recognises the powerful work that faith is doing. I don't think that's the case at the moment, so that's why I'm taking faith across government, not just within my department. Look, faith communities and faith can get to places where government can't. That's a reality. I'll say this again. Faith can reach places in supporting not food banks, but helping people with homelessness, poverty, refugee support. It gets places where government can't. And I think government at times should and listen to more of people of faith who are dedicated through their purpose to help people and serve the country. So what we've got to do is work in partnership and support people doing that job. And that means also resourcing them and working together, because the government missions are being fulfilled a lot by people from faith communities, and we've got to recognise that. And I think my job is to make sure that people from different cross departments, cross government, even number 10 Downing Street, recognise that. But of course we want to see that happen to benefit our people in our countries and our communities. And but the danger's there, but hopefully we'll ensure that respect and that dignity and that equal partnership is focused on.
Excellent, that's great. Well, thank you very much for coming, everyone. A massive appreciation to Lord Khan for being present at Pavilion this morning.
Thank you, Karen, and thank you very much for everyone for turning up, and thank you very much in particular for the advice on parenting.
You're very welcome. Very welcome.